Hello and welcome to the Video Archive series. In this series, we interview members of the SMU community who can provide insight into the history of SMU, especially from the perspective of their time and affiliation with the university. I'm Joan Gosnell, University Archivist, and today we have with us Sue Whitfield. Welcome, Sue, and thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Joan. It's good to be here.
What we're going to be doing is talking a little bit about your connections to SMU. And the first thing I'd like to ask you is, what is your very first memory of Southern Methodist University?
That's a good question, because I'm not sure where the dedication of the library or a trip with my grandmother here to an SMU board meeting.
Oh.
I flew up from Houston, and we came, and as a child, I sat with her through a meeting, and I remember doing that.
Were you dressed in your very best?
I don't remember. But we were for the dedication of the library.
Okay.
And I remember that pretty well. And I was there with all of my cousins, and they lined the girls up by my grandmother's picture, lined the boys up by their grandfather's picture, and at the proper sound, we unveiled it. And
did you have to practice doing that,
no.
or were you guys just
No,
pros?
there was no practice. It was just, and there they were.
And there were how many, 4 girl cousins?
There are three girl cousins and 3 boy cousins.
Okay. Now, your grandmother was alive for the dedication, right?
Yes.
Okay. But
yes. She lived to be almost 102.
Can you remember if this was in 1940?
Uh-huh.
So it was a little bit before the war. You were probably about, what, 13?
No, 6 or 7.
You were 6. Oops, I looked at the wrong picture. You were 6 years old. And who was the oldest cousin?
My oldest cousin is Dossie, and today she's married to Will Lummis.
Okay.
This is her 3rd marriage.
Okay. And how much older was she?
4 years.
4 years. So she was 10. So you were all quite young.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have to wear gloves?
No.
No. I thought Southern ladies always wore gloves.
Well, not in this picture. Of course, that's in the archives here. That's that picture of us that day.
Yeah, I've seen the picture.
Mm-hmm.
Can you remember anything else from that day?
I know that somebody had a dedication, and I think it was Bishop Selectman. I later read in one of the little brochures that I found in something that Mother and Dad had.
Right.
And I remember I had to sit still for quite a while I was going on.
That must have been hard for a 6-year-old. What was the campus like then? There obviously were fewer buildings. This was one of the most prominent new ones.
It was just the quadrangle.
Okay, just the quadrangle.
As I recall.
Mm-hmm. And was it in the spring?
I don't know. I don't remember it being cold, so it probably was.
You said you went to one of the earliest we went to an early board meeting. Where was that meeting held?
It was in something that looked like a gym. Now, I don't know what building it was.
Okay. And was that your first plane trip?
No.
Oh, you were a traveler.
I had flown before, but that was the first time I had gone with my grandmother someplace without anybody else.
So that was very exciting.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about how your family first got involved with SMU.
Well, that was my grandparents were interested in establishing libraries because neither one of them had the benefit of a formal education.
Okay.
And in fact, they were both self-taught. I have found where my grandmother would ask nieces and nephews to bring papers home from school, and she would study their papers and take their tests at home.
Really?
To educate herself.
Neat.
And I also have found where my grandfather had 2 weeks of education in a free school in Arkansas. That's all the education he had. I'm in Tennessee. That's all the education he had.
Formal education. 2 weeks. Wow. Mm-hmm. So your grandparents' involvement with SMU happened very early, didn't it?
Well, it happened, yes, I think Granddad was on the original board.
Yeah, so that would have been 1911.
Mm-hmm. and probably it grew out of his contact with the Methodist Church.
Okay. What was his connection to the Methodist Church?
Well, they had attended. I don't know whether it was St. Paul's then or not. It was probably First Methodist in Houston.
Okay.
And that seemed to be a good avenue for them to become involved. And they wanted to do something for people who could have an education since they didn't have one.
Well, SMU was being planned as the first big Methodist school west of the Mississippi.
Yes.
So I'm sure that's how your grandparents got involved.
I think so, because my grandfather was on the board, and then after his death, my grandmother went on. Okay. And then subsequently, my dad came on while my grandmother was on.
Okay. Do you have any idea of the dates of all of this?
I really don't know when Dad came on. I really don't.
Okay. It probably would have been in the 50s, 60s?
Probably so. And I think I came on in probably the 60s. I'm not sure.
Okay.
And they were both still on the board. They never.
All three of you?
All three of us.
Did you vote as a block?
No. Independent-minded.
Oh, good. Tell me about what you remember from when you were in college at SMU.
Well, when I came to SMU, one big thing was that there were no sorority houses. And the science building was new that year. It was its first year of its opening.
Right.
And the sororities met in apartments. And then I got to be in the first group that lived in the sorority houses.
Oh, wonderful. Which house was that?
Phi-Phi.
Phi-Phi, okay. Do you remember those days? What kind of rules and regulations did you have in the dorm?
We had strict rules. We had to be in by a certain time, and the lights blinked, and you had to come in. Absolutely, absolutely.
Were you allowed to be with boys, or did you have to be chaperoned?
We were allowed to be with boys.
Oh.
Oh yes.
Now I read some rules where girls weren't allowed to go to the library their freshman year at night until they had proved, certain academics. Do you remember that or not?
I don't remember that.
Okay.
I don't remember that.
That may have been before your time.
I think so.
Did you study a lot at the library when you were in college?
I didn't. I studied in my room. Set up my little corner.
Did you have a typewriter?
No, I didn't.
So you wrote all your...
I think I was given one for graduation from high school, but it was pencils and pens.
Okay. Do you remember any of the courses you took?
Well, I was home ec. I had a lot of costume design.
Oh, neat.
Psychology.
Oh, wow.
And of course we had economics and business math, and those kinds of things.
Who was your favorite teacher?
I don't know. That would be hard to say. And of course I loved languages. I took German.
Right.
And I'd taken Spanish all through high school. So that was fun.
What was the campus like back then?
Oh, that's a good question.
Where was where was the sorority, the first sorority?
They weren't very far from campus, and they were just little houses.
Little houses.
That, each sorority had one, I think, where they went and met.
About how many girls could be put in a house? Or was it just sort of an apartment at that point?
Well, we sat on the floor in the living room, as I recall. So, I don't know, 80 of us or however many.
So that must have been quite a few. How did you pick Phi-Phi?
Just, these were girls that I enjoyed, so it was fun. But I had friends in all the other sororities too, but I chose Phi-Phi because it seemed to be the one for me. I don't know.
Was most of the social life revolved around the sororities and fraternities?
Yes.
Now, did you go to any of the off-campus dances?
I did. They were fun.
Well, SMU wouldn't let couples dance on school campus, right?
Oh, yes, we did.
You had dances on campus, okay.
I don't ever be restricted in dancing.
You said that you had some memories of your grandmother at the Fondren dedication and some stories.
Well, I don't know about at the dedication. She learned to be a pretty good public speaker.
Wow.
And that was just by practice, I guess. But she, and I don't remember any of the things that she said at the dedication. But she enjoyed it. She enjoyed seeing things develop.
Right.
She enjoyed seeing her efforts become something that's useful to others.
Right. Did she ever go to the library herself and look up things?
I believe she did. One picture I've not been able to identify is an early Houston picture in the Houston Public Library, and it does look like my grandmother was there because she did have to work to educate herself.
Right, right.
And of course, she was widowed so young.
Okay, so she was a very young widow.
Mm-hmm. Well, in her early 60s, I think.
Okay, yeah, that is pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember? You said your father did not go to SMU.
No,
yet...
he didn't. He went to the University of Texas.
Okay. And he got involved in the SMU board through his mother.
Through his mother-in-law.
Whose mother-in-law?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And I'm assuming that mother declined to serve.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So she didn't want to pick up the cudgel, he did.
Right.
How often were those meetings then? About once a month?
Oh, I think less. I really don't know how often they
Yeah.
met. But I didn't think it was too often, 4 times a year or something like that.
4 times a year.
Unless they were on a committee, and I don't have any knowledge of that whatsoever.
Right. When you went to that first board meeting, when you were a little girl, do you remember how many people were there?
It looked like a gymnasium full of people. There were rows of folding chairs. I remember that. And lots of people that I didn't know. And of course, I was shorter.
And you were quite young. Your daughter said that you had another story that you wanted to tell.
Oh, well, she was talking about Granddad in the oil fields.
Okay. Tell me about that.
And in those days, smallpox was very prevalent in the oil fields.
Right.
And they would, as I have been told, I've never read this, that when someone became ill, they would put them in what they call the pest houses.
Right.
And Granddad smoked a cigar, and so he would puff the smoke all around his head, and go in and visit his workers, and he never got smallpox.
Wow. That was
Although
lucky.
my grandmother's brother did get smallpox, and
They had all the
had all those
scars.
terrible marks.
Scars. Is that how your grandfather made his money, from the oil business?
Mm-hmm. He was one of the original founders of Humble.
Oh, okay.
It became
That's
Exxon. That's now.
Came Esso and then Exxon. Your family has had a long connection with SMU. And it's obviously a very special bond because it's lasted so many years.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it has.
And I guess SMU because it was Methodist, of course. But then you must have just grown to enjoy the campus and the
Well, I
people.
think it's a beautiful campus, and by now I've seen quite a few campuses. I did have 2 children who came here, but I also have 2 children who went to other schools.
Right.
And so I think SMU has one of the prettiest campuses I've seen.
What other things do you think SMU has to offer that some of the other colleges don't?
Well, it's in a marvelous community. Dallas is wonderful. And it's in a lovely part of the city, and it's easy to get here from other places.
Right.
And I think it's a wonderful combination.
Were you pleased when 2 of your children chose to come here?
Very pleased, as a matter of fact.
And when did they go here?
And let's see, what year did they graduate? I think my daughter came here in 79, and my son in 82, I think.
Okay.
And they spent they spent their time here. My daughter went off to California to school for a year.
Okay.
But then came back to SMU. I was very pleased at that.
Oh, good. And at that time, were you on the board of trustees?
I certainly was by the time they graduated.
Right. Was it interesting listening to their comments as students versus your views as a trustee?
Well, we didn't talk about it too much, but the campus had the atmosphere of the campus had changed a lot.
Right.
Since I was there and since they were there. I mean, we wore hats and gloves to initiation and to rush when we were here. And today, nobody does that.
No, no. Now, did you have mandatory chapel back then too?
No.
No. Okay, that had been discontinued.
I don't know when that was discontinued.
I think it was probably sometime in the 1940s.
A little before my time.
Yeah, just recent. What are some of your other college memories from when you were here?
Well, the first thing, of course, that comes to mind is the storm of June 29th, 1951. I went into my last final. It was a clear, beautiful, crisp day, and I came out and slid down the steps of Higher Hall. There was ice and snow was everywhere.
Just during the test?
Just during the exam.
How did you manage to keep your mind on the test as you
Well,
looked out the window?
I didn't know. I had no idea that was going on. And so when I came out, I was completely surprised and just slid down all the way down the front steps of Higher Hall. And then we drove to Houston and found that the storm had blanketed the state.
Wow.
And three of us drove. There were 3 cars going.
Right.
And of course, in this part of the world, nobody really had practice in driving on ice and snow.
No.
And it took the car of girls 11 hours to get back to Houston because they learned that they could get traction if they put 2 wheels off of the pavement. And that's the way they went to Houston. So
That was a long trip.
that was a long trip.
I can see how that was memorable.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
When did you get involved with the Central University Library's executive board?
Well, after I'd been on the SMU board for a while, I was asked to join, and thought it would be an interesting thing to see. Although don't know that much about libraries, but I thought it would be an interesting place to participate at SMU.
What have you learned about libraries in your years now?
That libraries are not just stodgy, dusty places. Often there's a lot going on with the computers and all of the other resources. It's a wonderful place of activity. There's distance learning and all those extremely fun things to do.
Who are some of the librarians that you have worked with here?
Well, Jillian is the main one I have worked with.
Main contact.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What do you think her strengths are?
Well, she is very bright and very willing to try new things. I was pleased that she came to Houston to look at the Fondren Library at Rice, right, and to study what they are doing in storing some of their books in other locations.
Right.
And just really looking at new ways to do things. Not that you were going to change them all the things you were
right,
doing, but at least knowing what these other options are and being willing to see if that might be helpful.
That sounds like
storage is a problem, and of course retrieval is also a problem. And I think that Jillian thought the other system that we looked at, 6 hours was too long for the retrieval of a book.
Yes.
And I don't know how that works for other schools, but
right. So it's definitely her willingness to look at innovative.
To look at different things, and that may affect what the building needs are here, what the staffing needs. You just really don't know where it might lead.
And did that surprise you a great deal?
I think she's wonderful, and I think the idea of exploring new techniques in today's world is certainly what we're all doing.
Yeah, it comes back to your grandmother's original wanting to education.
Education, that's right.
And that different people find it in different ways.
That's right. Precisely.
You haven't told me a lot about the Board of Trustees meetings that you attended as a member. Were they very much structured, or was there a lot of give and take?
There was an agenda, absolutely, and we adhered to that.
Right.
And always learned something and enjoyed the people.
Were you encouraged to ask questions?
Yes, didn't always do it, but I was encouraged to. Yeah.
And what presidents did you work under, being on the board?
Oh my goodness. Well, oh my goodness, I can't even tell you. I remember so many of the presidents, and I don't remember who was president when I came on. So I'd have to do a little research on that.
Since I'm still so new to SMU, I really don't know the history as well as I should.
Mm-hmm.
So pick a president and tell me about them.
Oh my goodness. Well, of course, the one we know best is Gerald Turner, who
Right.
has really made a wonderful mark at SMU with time to lead,
Right.
and I think he's done a very good job of bringing SMU forward to this century. I think he's one of the outstanding presidents. And
Did you have any little stories about him personally?
I really don't. I've only met him in structured environments,
That's right.
and so he's always been very, very cordial, and certainly like his wife Gail.
And Dr. Pai?
Dr. Pai, I enjoyed him. I had less time with him.
Right.
I really,
It was a short
and
time.
not too many conversations with him. So
And who were the other presidents that you worked with?
you have, as I told you,
yeah.
I should have had a little more preparation for this.
Okay. Well, I don't want to press you on anything, so just relax.
Okay.
I know that I'm missing some of the things that I need to be asking you. I'm not sure what to ask.
Well, I was only I've spent more time on the board. I was only at SMU as a student for 2 years.
Right.
And so those were the years when the student life was more structured.
Right.
I thought we had a very good time. I was glad to see people living on campus.
Right.
I'm really sad to see so many people living off campus now.
Yeah.
I really think that my children missed something by living off campus,
Right.
and they were just never.
Did
quite a
they
few of
join? Did they join
They
sorority?
both did.
Okay, sororities and fraternities.
But it was not the close knit situation that I had seen earlier.
Do you still count some of the girls from your college days to be some of your close friends?
Not too many, believe it or not. My high school days are the ones where I have the good friends,
Yeah.
and some from the University of Texas. But somehow my SMU friends have all were from different places,
Right.
and I have not kept up with them, which is probably
Really, from different places. I always thought of SMU as such a Dallas school.
Well, it's always had that reputation.
Right.
But the people I happen to encounter on a day-to-day basis, many of them were not.
Where were they from?
Well, Chicago area, Beeville,
Okay.
and just various places like that. And
There sounds like there was a Houston contingent because you guys.
well, there certainly was. There certainly was, and I had known quite a few of the girls from high school.
Right.
But of those, some of them have moved away from Houston. I don't even know where they are,
Right.
and then cancer has taken a couple of them,
Oh, I'm so
which
sorry.
is a sad thing.
Yeah. Why did you choose SMU?
I was interested in medical art at that time, which
Really?
is a good thing I didn't choose it because it would be outmoded today. But I thought it would be wonderful to get a degree from SMU and then do 2 years of med school and to be able to draw medical pictures and illustrations for medical.
Interesting.
And so I had that interest and also costume design interest.
Wow.
And
SMU seemed to be.
it seemed to be a good place.
Was your father very pleased when you chose it?
Yes, he was. But he was also at University of Texas. He didn't graduate, but
Right.
he also enjoyed that, so he was glad when I went there.
So you made him happy twice.
Oh, yes.
Can you tell me anything else that you remember about those early days at SMU?
That's this is challenging. I guess my mind had moved on to other things. I'm not able to recall some of those, but we did have a good time.
We did have a good time.
And we did have the balls down, the dances downtown, and some of the lovely times.
Did you wear long gowns or short?
We did. Yeah, I do.
Long gowns, many weekends, or?
Well, quite a few. Mm-hmm.
How did you manage to store all those gowns and clothes in your
dorm
room?
We kept the males very busy, going back and forth to Houston.
I bet you did. Do you remember what the post office was like if you kept the mail so busy?
Well, it was in a prefab building.
Oh my gosh!
And we didn't even have the student union. I think was also prefab.
Okay.
And some of our classrooms were at that time. So.
Were there a lot of returning veterans, or had they mostly all gone by then?
I don't remember too many.
Okay. And was Trailerville still here, or was that gone?
I think it was still here.
Okay. Yeah.
So. And I don't know when. I'm trying to think when the post office. I haven't thought about that in a long time. It seemed like it was with the student union. It was just kind of a little side room off of that, and we'd go to get the mail.
And what did you do at the student union? Did they have a soda shop?
I don't know. I didn't participate. I had everything either at the dorm or later at the sorority house, or we went out on a date.
Ooh. And where would you go on dates?
Well, there were various. There were various soda shops and also dinners around town.
Did they show movies on campus that you could go to?
They probably did, but I didn't. I don't think I did that. I don't remember doing it. So I can't speak to that.
What has kept your commitment to SMU alive for all of these years?
Well, the family ties, and it's my family has participated in doing some scholarships, and so it's been good to try to keep up with some of the students who have had the scholarships. Not as well as I would like, however. But
what scholarships does your family sponsor?
Well, Dad had started it, and actually, I think my granddad started it.
Okay.
One in his son's name, and then Dad did one in his son's name, my older brother who died before I was born, and so just like that, and built that in that way.
Huh. Did they sponsor like a student from a certain geographical area, or a student with a certain student?
Dad may have done that. I have not carried on that tradition.
Okay.
But Dad may have done that.
Okay.
I think he did.
Okay.
And
you did more just academic need, financial need.
But if somebody's coming that I know about, I've been known to make a phone call or two.
So that means that your
In
family.
fact, I have some cousins coming right now who are applying.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that means that I didn't know about the scholarships. That's just interesting. Do you get to meet the students?
I have not, but they write, and sometimes I write them back, and so forth.
Yeah.
And I have been asked to speak at some symposiums in Houston, and people would come up and say, "I went to SMU, or I went to Texas or McMurray, or where we had our A&M,
right?
Where it was a family scholarship."
That must be really gratifying.
And it's wonderful to meet people that have gone through school or partially through school on a scholarship from the family.
Yeah, that would be neat.
It is. It is.
Do you think your children will continue their relationship to SMU? The family's relationship?
Well, that's a good question. Probably my daughter, who is here, will.
Right.
I think that's the best chance.
She lives in Dallas.
She does live in Dallas.
And does she have children yet?
And she has 3 children.
Are they?
And they're not of age yet.
Okay.
The eldest became a teenager.
Oh.
So there's a lot of activity there. Not focused on college at this point.
Not yet. Has she been on any of the SMU boards yet, or not?
We've talked about it, but she's just too busy.
Right. Raising
children.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it sounds like.
I will say that one of my nieces got a very good education in the music department and plays the cello, and has been very successful with that. And she now lives in Boston.
Oh, wow. Did you ever come to any of her performances on campus?
Oh, yes.
You were a good aunt.
Well, it's fun. It's fun to encourage young people, because they have a lot of choices out there to make in their lives. We want to encourage them when we think they're making the right choices. My grandparents had done, as you know, college or libraries at other schools beside SMU.
Okay.
They one at Rice in Houston.
Right.
And as I've already mentioned, Jillian came down to look at that school. And that is the school that has a lot of our family history, because one of my cousins decided to put the family photographs at the Fondren Library at Rice.
Oh.
And they were donated without identification. And so I am currently doing that to identify the pictures, which are marvelous, marvelous.
So you've spent a lot of time with libraries.
Well, it depends on what you call a lot. But, sometime, and I enjoy it.
How do you think special collections are always so unique to each university?
Yes, and I know how interested the libraries are to get those special collections.
Right. As a library board member, was it fun when you heard of another collection?
Absolutely. And of course, right now, I am interested in seeing if the SMU library has anything on my great-grandfather, Thomas Fondren.
Right.
Because with its Civil War records and so forth, and I am hoping that will be productive. And I have brought some more material that maybe will help me along those searches.
Well, Sue, I want to thank you for being both a good trustee of SMU as well as being a good library user. And I appreciate your time today.
Well, I appreciate having the opportunity.
Thank you.